My new girlfriend and I just bought a place together, with your savings. She's everything you'll never be. The message glowed on my phone screen at 3 a.m. in my cramped barracks room in Bavaria. I stared at the photo attached. My husband Darren grinning like an idiot next to a blonde woman barely out of college, both holding a sold sign in front of a 2-story house I'd never seen before. My name is Valerie Morgan, and I'm a 35-year-old logistics officer in the United States Army, currently deployed at a base in Germany. For 6 months, I'd been coordinating supply chains and managing military operations, while my husband back in Austin, Texas, had been exploring his entrepreneurial freedom, which apparently meant exploring unemployment benefits and my bank account. I set my phone down carefully, my hands steadier than they had any right to be. Around me, the base was quiet, except for the distant hum of generators and the occasional footsteps of night patrol. I'd been sending money home every month, $2,000 religiously transferred to our joint account that we'd both agreed would help my parents retire and serve as our house down payment when I returned. "Wow, you're so smart," I typed back, my fingers moving with deliberate calm. The rage would come later. Right now, I felt something colder, more calculating. Darren had always been impulsive, but this crossed every line we'd drawn in our 8-year marriage. The woman in the photo, all fake tan and Instagram poses, looked young enough to be his daughter. Her name was probably something trendy. Everything about the situation screamed desperation and midlife crisis. I scrolled through the other photos he'd sent over the past week. Darren at restaurants I couldn't afford even on my officer's salary. Darren buying expensive wine. Darren and his girlfriend on shopping trips, her arms loaded with designer bags. Each image felt like a deliberate slap, designed to show me how much better his life had become without me. What he didn't know was that a month ago, I'd received a fraud alert from our bank. I'd been too busy with a major supply shipment to investigate properly, but now the pieces were falling into place. Something about unauthorized access attempts and signature verification issues. At the time, I'd assumed it was a system glitch. The photo of the house haunted me most. It wasn't just any house. It was the exact style we'd talked about buying together, complete with the wraparound porch I'd dreamed of since childhood. He'd taken our shared vision and twisted it into his betrayal. I reached for my secure phone. It was time to make some calls. The next morning, I sat across from Captain Patricia Weber in the JAG legal office, a small room that smelled of burnt coffee and determination. Patricia was in her 40s, sharp-eyed, and had seen enough military spouse betrayals to fill a handbook. "Tell me everything," she said, sliding a legal pad across the desk. I handed her my phone, showing the photos and messages. My husband emptied our joint savings to buy a house with another woman. He's been unemployed for over a year, living off my deployment pay. Patricia's expression hardened as she scrolled through the evidence. "When did you last authorize any major transactions?" "Never. We agreed the money was for my parents' retirement and our future down payment." I pulled out bank statements I'd printed that morning. "I've been sending $2,000 monthly to our joint account. He was supposed to be paying bills and saving the rest. How much are we talking about?" "Approximately $45,000 over the past 18 months. The number hit me fresh each time I said it. Nearly 2 years of careful saving, gone. Patricia made notes quickly. "You mentioned a fraud alert?" "About a month ago. Something about signature verification and unauthorized access attempts. I was coordinating a major supply operation and didn't have time to investigate." I felt stupid admitting it, but deployment schedules were brutal. "That's actually good news. It means the bank flagged suspicious activity." She picked up her phone. "I'm calling Sergeant First Class Rodriguez in financial crimes. He specializes in military spouse fraud cases." Within an hour, I was sitting with both Patricia and Rodriguez, a stocky man with kind eyes who'd clearly seen too many soldiers betrayed by the people they trusted most. "Mrs. Morgan, this happens more than you'd think," Rodriguez said. "Deployed service members are particularly vulnerable. The distance, the time zones, the trust we place in our families, it creates perfect conditions for financial abuse. He opened a thick folder. The good news is you have strong legal protections. The Service Members Civil Relief Act, military banking regulations, and if he forged your signature, which seems likely, we're looking at federal wire fraud. What's the process? First, we contact the bank to freeze all joint accounts. Then we trace every transaction. If he used forged documents or misrepresented your deployment status to bypass normal verification procedures, that's multiple felonies. Rodriguez's voice carried quiet satisfaction. Some people think military spouses are easy targets. They're about to learn otherwise. I felt something shift inside me, the first stirring of hope since seeing those photos. By that afternoon, I had a full financial investigation team working my case. Staff Sergeant Jennifer Clark, a forensic accountant with the military police, had pulled transaction records going back 2 years. The picture they painted was worse than I'd imagined. "He's been bleeding your account dry for months," Jennifer said, pointing to a printout covered in red marks. "Small amounts at first, 300 here, 500 there. Classic pattern of financial abuse. The victim doesn't notice until it's too late." I studied the highlighted withdrawals. Restaurant charges at places I'd never heard of. Online purchases for electronics, clothing, jewelry. Cash advances that happened almost weekly. I thought he was just struggling with unemployment. I kept sending more money because I felt guilty being away. That's exactly what he was counting on, Rodriguez added. He'd returned with more documents, including copies of the house purchase paperwork. Here's where it gets interesting. To buy that house, he needed to show stable income and down payment funds. He did that by forging your signature on financial documents and claiming you were a willing co-purchaser. Patricia leaned forward. "Show her the loan application." Rodriguez spread out several pages. There, in handwriting that almost looked like mine, was my signature on mortgage documents. My supposed income was listed as my full military salary plus a fictional consulting business. My deployment was misrepresented as a temporary assignment, suggesting I'd be returning to Texas permanently within months. "He told them you were deployed, but actively participating in the purchase," Jennifer explained. "Made it seem like you were shopping for houses via video calls and had given him power of attorney for the closing." I felt physically sick. Power of attorney that doesn't exist. Correct. Which makes every document he signed a forgery and every representation he made fraud. Rodriguez's tone was grimly satisfied. "The girlfriend's involvement makes it worse. She signed documents claiming to know you personally and confirming your consent to the purchase. She's never met me." "Conspiracy to commit wire fraud," Patricia noted. They both knew the representations were false. Jennifer pulled out her laptop. "I've already contacted the title company and the bank. The Service Members Civil Relief Act gives us significant leverage here. When they find out a deployed service member's signature was forged and their protected funds were misused, everything stops." "What happens next?" "Tomorrow morning, investigators from the Office of Service Members Civil Relief will be waiting at the title company," Rodriguez said. "Darren and his girlfriend are scheduled to complete the final closing paperwork at 10 a.m. Texas time." I looked at the photo of the house again. My dream home bought with my betrayed trust. "Will I get the money back?" "Every penny," Patricia assured me. "Plus interest, penalties, and probably their legal fees when this is over." For the first time in days, I smiled. My husband thought he was so smart, but he'd just committed federal crimes with a paper trail that would make prosecutors' jobs easy. The next morning, I found myself pacing the communications room at 4 a.m., calculating time zones obsessively. It was 9 a.m. in Austin, 1 hour before Darren and Tiffany's scheduled closing. I'd barely slept, running through every possible scenario of what was about to unfold. My secure phone buzzed with an encrypted message from Rodriguez. "Assets frozen. Team in position. Will update hourly." Patricia found me there, clutching a cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. You know you don't have to watch this unfold in real time, she said gently. Yes, I do. I couldn't explain why, but I needed to be present for this moment, even from 4,000 miles away. He spent months planning this betrayal, sending me those photos to hurt me. I want to know the exact moment it all falls apart. She sat down beside me. Jennifer's team found more evidence overnight. Your husband's been living quite the lifestyle on your deployment pay. I looked up from my phone. What do you mean? Credit cards you didn't know about, opened in both your names using your social security number and forged signatures. He's been funding expensive dinners, weekend trips, even bought the girlfriend a car. Patricia handed me a thick folder. Total debt in your name, $78,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. 78,000? I'd been careful with money my entire adult life, building credit slowly, saving religiously. How is that even legal? It's not. Identity theft, fraud, forgery. He's been busy. She pointed to specific charges. Look at the timeline. Most of these purchases happened right after you deployed, when he knew you'd be too busy to monitor accounts closely. I stared at charges for jewelry stores, luxury hotels, expensive restaurants, a $3,000 weekend at a resort in San Antonio, $5,000 at a high-end clothing boutique. While I was eating MREs and sleeping in a barracks, he was living like a millionaire. My phone buzzed again. Subjects arrived early, investigators in conference room adjacent to closing office. They're there, I told Patricia, my heart racing. She squeezed my shoulder. Whatever happens next, remember that you're not the victim here anymore. You're the one who caught them. At exactly 10:15 a.m. Texas time, my phone rang. It was Rodriguez, calling from Austin. Valerie, we got them. I put the call on speaker so Patricia could hear. What happened? They walked into the title company like they owned the world. Darren was actually bragging to the girlfriend about how easy it had been to access your money. Said military wives were too trusting and stupid to notice anything. My hands clenched into fists. He said that? In front of 2 investigators who recorded every word. Rodriguez sounded pleased. When the title company representative told them there was a problem with the signatures, Darren got belligerent. Started yelling about how his wife was deployed and couldn't be expected to come in person for every little detail. Then what? That's when Officer Janet Martinez from Service Member Civil Relief introduced herself. She explained that forging a deployed service member's signature on financial documents was a federal crime, and that all assets related to the transaction were being frozen pending investigation. I could picture Darren's face, the arrogance melting into panic. How did he react? Denied everything at first. Claimed you'd given him permission for all of it. Then the girlfriend started crying, saying she didn't know any of this was illegal. Rodriguez paused. But here's the best part. Martinez asked him to explain the power of attorney documentation, and he couldn't produce any legitimate paperwork. Because it doesn't exist. Exactly. That's when he realized how much trouble he was in. Rodriguez continued his account, and I could hear the satisfaction in his voice. The title company had to call their legal department immediately. Turns out, when they ran the verification checks this morning, which they should have done weeks ago, half the documents didn't match their security protocols. What kind of documents? Patricia asked, taking notes. Employment verification letters claiming Valerie worked for a consulting firm in Austin. Bank statements showing joint income that didn't exist. Even a letter supposedly from Valerie's commanding officer giving her permission to purchase property while deployed. Rodriguez's voice carried professional disgust. All forged, all easily disproven. I felt a mix of vindication and fury. How sophisticated were the forgeries? Amateur hour. Darren's not nearly as smart as he thinks. He used an old letterhead template he probably downloaded online, and the supposed commanding officer signature was just a Google image of a military signature. Any real verification would have caught it immediately. My phone buzzed with a text message, and my blood went cold. It was from Darren. What the hell did you do? They're saying I committed fraud. This is your fault for not being here. I showed the message to Patricia, who shook her head. Even when caught red-handed, he's still blaming you. That's going to look great in court. Rodriguez was still talking. The girlfriend's involvement runs deeper than we initially thought. Tiffany wasn't just a passive participant. She actively helped forge documents. We found text messages between them planning how to make the fake paperwork look legitimate. She was in on it from the beginning? According to the message thread we recovered, she's the one who suggested using your deployment status to their advantage. Said military wives were easy targets because they couldn't monitor things closely. His voice hardened. She also bragged to friends about spending your money, posting social media photos with captions like, "When your man knows how to provide." I remembered those photos. Tiffany in expensive restaurants, wearing jewelry I couldn't afford, living the life I should have been building for my future. Social media evidence? Screenshots of everything. She documented their entire fraud scheme thinking it made her look successful. Every expensive dinner, every shopping trip, every luxury purchase, all time-stamped and geotagged. Rodriguez sounded almost amused. Criminals who post their crimes online make our jobs much easier. Patricia was making rapid notes. What's the immediate fallout? All joint accounts frozen. The house sale is voided. The title company is facing their own legal issues for not properly verifying the documents. And both Darren and Tiffany are looking at federal charges. My phone buzzed again with another text from Darren. You ruined everything. Tiffany's crying and it's all your fault. I loved you and this is how you repay me? I showed it to Patricia, who laughed darkly. He loved you so much he stole your money and bought a house with another woman. That's definitely going in the evidence file. Rodriguez continued. The U.S. Attorney's Office is very interested in this case. Military spouse fraud is a priority for them, especially when it involves forged documents and identity theft. They're looking at wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy, and violations of the Service Members Civil Relief Act. What kind of penalties are we talking about? Wire fraud alone carries up to 20 years. Add the identity theft and military protection violations, and they're both looking at serious federal prison time. He paused. Plus full restitution to you, including penalties and interest. I felt something I hadn't experienced since seeing those first photos. Genuine peace. When will they be arrested? Already happened. They're both in federal custody as of 30 minutes ago. 3 hours later, I was back in the communications room when Jennifer Clark called with updates that made everything even more satisfying. Valerie, you need to hear this. When we executed the search warrant on their apartment, we found evidence of a much bigger scheme, Jennifer said, her voice carrying barely contained excitement. I put her on speaker. What kind of evidence? Darren's been doing this to other military spouses. We found files on 3 other women whose husbands are deployed, complete with forged documents and stolen financial information. She paused for effect. He wasn't just betraying you. He was running a military spouse fraud operation. Patricia's eyebrows shot up. Other victims? All logistics or supply officers like Valerie, all deployed to locations with challenging communication schedules. He specifically targeted women in positions where they'd be too busy to monitor accounts closely. Jennifer's tone turned grim. Tiffany helped him research the targets through social media, identifying spouses with good credit and steady military income. I felt sick thinking about other women going through what I'd experienced. How much money total? Preliminary estimate is over $200,000 across 4 victims, including you. But here's where it gets interesting. The girlfriend wasn't just his accomplice. She was the mastermind. That revelation hit me like a slap. Tiffany planned this? According to seized communications, she approached Darren after meeting him at a bar 6 months ago. She'd researched military spouse fraud techniques online and was looking for someone with access to deployed partners. Jennifer's voice carried professional disgust. She specifically targeted older, unemployed men married to successful military women. Patricia was furiously taking notes. So this was premeditated identity theft operation? Gets better. Tiffany's real name is Tiffany Rodriguez. She's been using multiple identities to run romance scams for years. The Instagram fitness coach persona was completely fake, designed to attract men like Darren who were feeling insecure about their wives' success. I thought about those photos again, my husband grinning beside someone who'd manipulated him into destroying our marriage. Was any of their relationship real? Based on the evidence, she was planning to disappear once they'd stolen enough money to buy the house outright. The mortgage was just a temporary step. She intended to refinance or sell quickly, taking her share and moving on to the next target. My phone buzzed with yet another message from Darren. They're saying Tiffany is a criminal who used me. You have to help me. I made a mistake, but I didn't know she was lying about everything. I showed the message to Patricia, who rolled her eyes. Now he wants your help. Classic manipulation, Jennifer continued. The best part is that their arrest was recorded by the title company's security cameras. Darren completely lost it when he realized the scope of the charges. Started screaming that Tiffany had lied to him about everything, that he thought you'd given permission for the house purchase. Did he really believe that? Hard to say. The messages we recovered suggest he knew it was wrong, but convinced himself he deserved your money because of your successful career. Jennifer's voice softened slightly. He also wrote several drafts of messages to you that he never sent. Apologies mixed with resentment about feeling like a failure compared to your military achievements. I felt an unexpected pang of sadness. Our marriage had problems, but I'd never imagined they'd lead to federal crime. What happens to the other victims? We're contacting them today. Thanks to your case, we can recover their money and prevent Tiffany from targeting anyone else. Jennifer paused. You probably saved several families from financial ruin. That thought gave me something I hadn't expected. Purpose beyond just personal justice. 2 weeks later, I received a call that made everything worth it. Rodriguez was calling from the federal courthouse in Austin, where Darren and Tiffany had just appeared for their arraignment. Valerie, you should have seen it, he said, barely containing his amusement. Darren showed up thinking he could charm his way out of federal charges. Wore his best suit, brought character references, the whole performance. I was sitting in my barracks room, finally able to sleep normally again now that justice was moving forward. How did that work out for him? About as well as you'd expect. The federal prosecutor laid out the entire scheme, the forged documents, the identity theft, the conspiracy with Tiffany, the other victims. When they got to the part about him bragging to investigators about how easy it was to steal from military wives, his lawyer actually put his head in his hands. I couldn't help but smile. And Tiffany? Even better. Turns out she had warrants in 3 other states for similar fraud schemes. The Instagram fitness coach thing was just her latest identity. She's been running romance scams and military spouse fraud for over 2 years. Rodriguez's voice carried deep satisfaction. She tried to throw Darren under the bus, claiming she was also a victim of his manipulation. The judge wasn't buying it. What are the charges? Darren's looking at wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy, and violations of military protection laws. Tiffany gets all that plus additional counts for the other victims and her previous warrant history. He paused. The prosecutor is recommending 5 to 7 years for Darren, 8 to 12 for Tiffany. I felt a weight I'd been carrying for weeks finally lift. When's the trial? They're both plea bargaining now. Full restitution to all victims plus penalties and court costs. Justice was finally coming. A month later, I was video calling Patricia from my barracks when she delivered the news I'd been waiting for. Both plea deals are finalized, she said, grinning at the camera. Darren pled guilty to all charges in exchange for 4 years. Federal prison plus 5 years probation. Full restitution of $93,000 to you, including penalties and interest. I sat back in my desk chair, finally able to process that it was really over. And Tiffany? 7 years federal prison. No early release eligibility. She has to pay restitution to all victims across multiple states. Total amount is over $300,000. Patricia's expression grew serious. The judge specifically mentioned that military spouse fraud undermines national security by targeting service members' families. What about the house? Reverted back to the original owners since the sale was fraudulent. Your money is being recovered from the escrow account, and Darren's responsible for any costs the title company incurred. She shuffled papers on her desk. There's more good news. The other military spouses they targeted are getting full restitution too. One woman had her entire deployment savings stolen. $28,000. I thought about those other women, probably feeling the same betrayal and confusion I'd experienced. At least something good came from this mess. Darren sent a letter through his lawyer, Patricia said carefully. He wants to apologize and ask for your forgiveness when he gets out of prison. I laughed, surprising myself. He still thinks this is about him. He destroyed our marriage, stole my money, committed federal crimes, and hurt other military families. But he wants my forgiveness? What should I tell his lawyer? Tell him I'm too busy building my real future to waste time on his fantasy of redemption. I looked at my deployment countdown calendar, suddenly excited about returning home. I have 3 months left here, then I'm starting fresh. The revenge was complete, but my life was just beginning. As I closed the laptop and prepared for my evening patrol, I realized that the betrayal that had shattered my trust had also revealed my own strength. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the catalyst for the best thing you'll ever do.